The blood-soaked fabric hit the floor with a wet slap, silencing the auditorium as Professor Thrix froze mid-sentence. The projector light illuminated his purple face, all three eyes widening at the interruption. A human stood in the doorway, his breathing heavy and his clothes smeared with red. In his hands, he carried what was unmistakably a freshly killed animal carcass. "Sorry I'm late," said Lucas Jenkins, seemingly oblivious to the 100 alien students staring in horror. "Got held up on my hunting trip." Professor Thrix's multiple appendages trembled as he gestured at his presentation slide, which boldly proclaimed, "Humans, evolved gatherers, not predators." "This is highly inappropriate," the professor stammered, his vocal sac inflating with distress. "We were just discussing how humans evolved primarily as foragers who occasionally scavenged, not as apex hunters." Lucas blinked, looking from the dead animal in his hands to the projection. "Well, that's not exactly right, is it?" He held up his prize. "Just took down this deer this morning. About 10 kilometers north. Arrow through the heart, clean kill." The students from various species across the Galactic Union shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was the prestigious Xenobiology Institute of Centauri Prime, where advanced theories on all sentient species were taught and developed. Having a human demonstrate such primitive behavior was both fascinating and disturbing. Professor Thrix cleared his throat, a sound like grinding pebbles. "Mr. Jenkins, please remove that specimen from my lecture hall immediately. This is a direct contradiction of accepted xenobiological theory." "Theory's wrong then," Lucas said with a shrug. "Been hunting since I was 12. Humans have been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years." A Venusian student raised a tendril. "Professor, perhaps this is evidence that our understanding of human evolution requires revision?" "Nonsense," Professor Thrix snapped. "Decades of research can't be dismissed because one human walks in with a dead animal." "Mr. Jenkins, I must insist." Lucas approached the podium, the deer slung over his shoulder. "Mind if I explain a few things to your class? Since I'm actually human and all." The students buzzed with excitement. This was far more interesting than the dry lecture they'd been enduring for the past hour. Professor Thrix's skin darkened to a deep indigo, the Xentarian equivalent of an angry flush. "This is highly irregular, but perhaps a first-hand account might be educational." His tone suggested he expected it to be anything but. Lucas gently placed the deer on the floor beside the podium, aware that many of the students were watching with a mixture of disgust and fascination. Some species in the class were strict herbivores who found the concept of meat consumption revolting. "First off," Lucas began, "humans are omnivores. Always have been. We gathered plants, sure, but we also hunted. Big game, small game, didn't matter. We developed tools specifically for hunting." He pulled out a small knife from his belt. "Like this. Been making blades for 2 million years." A Proximan student with translucent skin raised a glowing appendage. "But Professor Thrix's research indicates human physiology lacks the classic predator adaptations. No claws, no significant canines, limited speed." Lucas smiled. "That's because we didn't need them. We developed something better." He tapped his temple. "Our brains. We made weapons, tracked animals for days, worked in groups. Persistence hunting, we'd chase animals until they collapsed from exhaustion." Professor Thrix interjected, his professional dignity clearly wounded. "Mr. Jenkins, while your demonstration is visceral, it contradicts established xenobiological models. Humans lack the physical characteristics of dedicated hunters." "With respect, Professor," Lucas said, "you're thinking like a Xentarian. Your species evolved as ambush predators, hiding and striking. Humans took a different path. We weren't the strongest or fastest, but we were the most stubborn." The classroom was now fully engaged, the initial shock giving way to scientific curiosity. Lucas had inadvertently created the most engaging xenobiology lesson of the semester. "Take this deer," Lucas continued, gesturing to his kill. "I tracked it for 6 hours. Used environmental signs to predict its movement. Made my own bow and arrows. That's not gathering, that's hunting at its most fundamental." A Regellian student with 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "But the archaeological record has been misinterpreted," Lucas finished. "Your archaeological teams find plant processing tools more often because they preserve better. Meat gets eaten, bones decay. But when you look at human teeth, digestive systems, and our brain development, which required protein-rich diets, the evidence is clear." Professor Thrix was now pacing nervously. "This directly contradicts my published work of the last 20 years. "Science advances when we admit we're wrong," Lucas said. "I mean no disrespect, but I literally walked in here carrying the evidence." The professor's third eye narrowed. "One example does not invalidate a theory." "Then let me offer more," Lucas said. "Human settlements have always been built near water sources, not just for drinking, but because animals come to drink too, making them easier to hunt. Our eyes face forward for depth perception, a predator trait. Our shoulders evolved to throw weapons with accuracy." The class was now taking notes frantically, some recording the exchange. This unexpected debate was proving far more educational than the planned lecture. Furthermore, Lucas continued, human persistence hunting techniques have been documented across cultures from Africa to Australia. We sweat to cool down, allowing us to run for hours while other animals overheat. A student from the methane seas of Titan raised a gelatinous arm. "But I read that early humans primarily ate insects and gathered fruits. Is that incorrect?" "Not incorrect, just incomplete," Lucas explained. "We ate whatever was available. Insects, fruits, nuts, roots, and meat when we could get it. The important point is that we actively hunted, not just scavenged. That's what made us different from other primates." Professor Thrix was now visibly distressed. "Even if what you say has merit, Mr. Jenkins, bringing a bloody carcass into an academic setting is inappropriate." Lucas looked down at the deer and then back at the professor. "Maybe on Centauri Prime. But this is how humans teach too, through demonstration. I could have just told you I hunt, but showing you makes it real." The professor's assistant, a young Arcturian named Zev, approached with a scanner. "Professor, with your permission, I'd like to analyze the humans' hunting techniques. This could provide valuable data." "This is highly irregular," Professor Thrix muttered, but scientific curiosity was beginning to overcome his academic pride. "Very well. But Mr. Jenkins, please refrain from bringing dead animals to future lectures." Lucas nodded. "Fair enough. But I'd be happy to take some of your students on a field trip if they want to see human hunting techniques firsthand." The suggestion caused an excited murmur throughout the classroom. "We could document the entire process," one student suggested. "A comparative analysis with other predator species techniques would be fascinating," added another. Professor Thrix's color had gradually shifted from angry indigo to a more thoughtful lavender. Perhaps there is merit in reevaluating our understanding. Science must follow evidence, after all." "That's all I'm saying," Lucas said. "Your theories about humans are missing a big part of who we are. We're not just gatherers who occasionally got lucky with meat. We're persistent hunters who also gathered." The professor sighed, a whistling sound through his breathing spiracles. "Mr. Jenkins, would you be willing to collaborate on a revised paper? Your practical experience combined with my theoretical framework might produce something of value." Lucas smiled. "I'd be honored, Professor. Though I should probably clean up first." He gestured to the blood on his clothes. "Yes, please do," the professor agreed hastily. "And perhaps we should move the specimen to the laboratory for proper examination." As several students helped Lucas move the deer to the lab, Professor Thrix adjusted his lecture notes, crossing out sections and adding new points. The day's lesson had taken an unexpected turn, but sometimes the most valuable scientific discoveries came from challenging established theories. In the laboratory, Lucas demonstrated how to properly field dress a deer, explaining each step to the fascinated xenobiology students. Many had never seen such a process before, and while some of the more sensitive species had to leave the room, most stayed, captivated by this window into human evolutionary history. "The cut needs to be precise," Lucas explained as he worked. "This technique hasn't changed much in thousands of years." Zev, the professor's assistant, was recording everything. "How did you learn these skills? They're not commonly taught in human educational institutions anymore, are they?" "My father taught me," Lucas said. "And his father taught him. Some human families still pass down these traditions. It connects us to our ancestors." "Fascinating," Zev replied. "The cultural transmission of hunting knowledge despite technological advancement." As Lucas continued the demonstration, Professor Thrix entered the lab, having composed himself after the initial shock. He watched silently for several minutes before speaking. "Mr. Jenkins, I owe you an apology. While your methods were startling, you have provided valuable insight. It seems our understanding of human evolution has been overly influenced by comparing humans to other predator species rather than recognizing your unique evolutionary path." Lucas nodded appreciatively. "No hard feelings, Professor. Every species sees the universe through the lens of their own evolution. It's easy to misunderstand others." "Indeed," the professor agreed. "Perhaps that is the most valuable lesson here. Our xenobiological models must account for convergent evolution, different paths to similar outcomes." As the impromptu lab session continued, more faculty members and students from other departments arrived, drawn by rumors of the unusual demonstration. What had begun as an embarrassing interruption was transforming into a significant academic event. Dr. Alera, the head of the xenobiology department, entered the lab with several colleagues. Her crystalline form shimmered as she approached Professor Thrix. "I hear there's been a challenge to your human evolution theory, Thrix," she said, her voice resonating like wind chimes. "Less a challenge, more an expansion," Professor Thrix replied diplomatically. "Mr. Jenkins has provided compelling evidence for reconsidering the role of hunting in human development." Dr. Alera observed Lucas as he carefully separated usable meat from the carcass. "Impressive skill. Reminds me of the ritual hunters on Regulus IV, though they use tentacles rather than hands." "That's the thing about evolution," Lucas said without looking up from his work. "Different solutions to the same problems. Humans didn't develop claws or fangs, we made tools instead." "A fair point," Dr. Alera conceded. "Professor Thrix, I think this incident warrants a department-wide review of our curriculum regarding Earth species. Perhaps other assumptions need to be challenged as well." The professor's color shifted slightly, but he nodded. Science advances through revision, after all. As the afternoon progressed, the initial shock of Lucas's entrance faded into productive academic discourse. The deer was fully processed, with samples taken for various research projects and the meat properly stored for later study or, as Lucas suggested, a traditional human cookout to further demonstrate human food preparation techniques. Later that evening, Lucas was invited to join a faculty dinner in the Institute's Grand Hall. The atmosphere was much different from the tension of the morning. Now he was treated as an honored guest rather than a disruptive student. "Tell me, Mr. Jenkins," asked Professor Mendel, a renowned expert on cross-species genetics, "do you think this hunting instinct still influences human behavior in modern society?" Lucas considered the question as he cut into the vegetarian meal that had been prepared to accommodate all the different species present. "Absolutely. Look at human sports, many simulate hunting. We still track, pursue, and capture, just in different contexts. Even our problem-solving approaches often follow hunter patterns." "Fascinating," Professor Mendel replied. "We've been teaching that humans outgrew these instincts, but perhaps they've just been redirected. Professor Thrix, seated across from Lucas, had spent the day revising his presentation. I've been reviewing historical records. It seems we overlooked significant evidence of hunting's importance in human development. The protein-rich diet from meat consumption likely accelerated brain development, creating a feedback loop of better hunting strategies, leading to better nutrition, leading to larger brains. Exactly, Lucas agreed. Without hunting, we might never have developed the cognitive abilities that eventually led to space travel and joining the Galactic Union. Dr. Alara chimed in, her crystalline form catching the light. This raises interesting questions about other species' development paths. Perhaps we should re-examine our assumptions about the Procyon and Aldebaranians as well. The conversation continued late into the evening, with Lucas finding himself the center of attention as various faculty members posed questions about human evolutionary history. What had begun as an embarrassing intrusion had transformed into a valuable exchange of knowledge. The next morning, Lucas was surprised to find a message from the Institute's director requesting his presence. He arrived at the ornate office uncertain of what to expect. Director Vorn, a massive gas-based entity contained within an environmental suit, greeted him warmly. Mr. Jenkins, your impromptu demonstration yesterday has caused quite a stir in our academic community. I hope in a good way, Lucas replied cautiously. Indeed. We pride ourselves on following evidence wherever it leads, even when it challenges established theories. Professor Thrix's work, while valuable, has clearly been missing critical perspectives. This is why cross-species education is so important. The director's environmental suit shifted colors as he spoke, indicating positive emotions. I would like to offer you a position as a special consultant to our xenobiology department. Your practical knowledge of human evolutionary behaviors would be invaluable.
Lucas was taken aback.
I'm flattered, Director, but I'm not an academic. I'm just a colonist from New Montana who happens to hunt. Sometimes the most valuable insights come from practitioners rather than theorists, Director Vorn replied. Your demonstration yesterday taught our students more about human evolutionary behavior than a semester of lectures. Knowledge takes many forms, Mr. Jenkins. After considering the offer, Lucas accepted a part-time consulting position that would allow him to continue his work at the human colony while periodically providing insights to the Institute's xenobiology program. In the weeks that followed, Professor Thrix and Lucas collaborated on a comprehensive paper titled Reconsidering Human Evolutionary Pathways, the Critical Role of Active Hunting Behaviors. The paper caused a significant stir in xenobiological circles, challenging decades of established theory. Lucas also made good on his promise to take interested students on a field expedition to demonstrate human hunting techniques. A group of 12 students from various species, along with Professor Thrix and Zev, traveled to the wilderness areas of New Montana for a 3-day practical course. The most important hunting skill isn't the kill, Lucas explained as they tracked a deer through the forest. It's reading the environment. Every broken twig, every disturbed leaf tells a story. The students watched in fascination as Lucas pointed out signs invisible to untrained eyes, slight depressions in the soil, bent grass blades, bark rubbed from trees. Humans don't have enhanced senses like many predator species, he continued. But we learn to notice patterns, to see what others miss. That's how we survived without natural weapons. Professor Thrix, who had initially been skeptical about the field trip, found himself increasingly engaged. This pattern recognition capability must have transferred to other aspects of human development science, art, technology. Exactly, Lucas agreed. The same skills that let us track animals helped us track stars, understand seasonal changes, develop agriculture. On the second day, Lucas demonstrated various hunting methods, traps, snares, and finally, bow hunting. When he successfully took down a small deer with a clean shot, the reaction from the students was markedly different from the shock of his classroom entrance weeks earlier. Now, they observed with scientific interest, asking questions about the technique, the physics of the bow, and the anatomical knowledge required for a humane kill. Even the herbivore species in the group, while not participating in the actual hunt, gained new understanding of human evolutionary pressures. A Betelgeusian student with plant-like characteristics noted, "This explains much about human physiology and psychology that previously seemed contradictory." That evening, around a campfire, Lucas demonstrated another uniquely human tradition: cooking meat. "Fire was perhaps our most important technology," he explained as he carefully prepared the venison. "It made meat safer to eat, more digestible, and allowed us to extract more nutrients." Professor Thrix, who had been taking extensive notes, asked, "Would you say fire and hunting together created a unique evolutionary pressure on humans?" "Absolutely," Lucas replied. "Cooking meat gave us more calories with less effort. Our digestive systems evolved to take advantage of cooked food, our jaws and teeth changed, and our brains could grow larger because we weren't spending as much energy on digestion." The carnivorous and omnivorous students sampled the cooked venison, while alternative meals were provided for those who couldn't or chose not to eat meat. The shared meal became another teaching moment about human culture and evolution. By the third day, even the most skeptical students had gained new appreciation for human evolutionary history. As they packed up to return to the institute, Professor Thrix approached Lucas privately. "I must confess, Mr. Jenkins, when you first walked into my lecture hall with that bloody carcass, I was outraged. I saw it as a deliberate affront to my academic authority." Lucas smiled. "I really was just running late for my hunting trip. Didn't mean to cause a scene." "Nevertheless, it has proven to be one of the most valuable learning experiences of my career," the professor continued. "Sometimes we become so entrenched in our theories that we fail to see contradicting evidence right before our eyes or walking through our door, as the case may be. That's the beauty of science, isn't it?" Lucas replied, "Being willing to change your mind when new evidence appears." Upon returning to the institute, the field trip participants gave presentations to their peers, sharing what they had learned about human hunting behaviors and evolutionary adaptations. The event was so successful that the director approved, making it a regular part of the xenobiology curriculum. 6 months later, Professor Thrix and Lucas's paper was published in the prestigious Galactic Journal of Evolutionary Biology. The response was immediate and far-reaching, prompting reevaluation of established theories about not just humans, but several other species whose evolutionary pathways had been similarly misunderstood. At a ceremony marking the paper's publication, Director Vorn addressed the assembled faculty and students. "This collaboration reminds us of the core principle of scientific inquiry, that we must always be willing to challenge our assumptions when confronted with new evidence." Professor Thrix demonstrated admirable scientific integrity by revising his long-standing theory in light of Mr. Jenkins's practical demonstration. Professor Thrix, whose academic standing had ultimately been enhanced rather than diminished by the revision of his theory, nodded in agreement. As scientists, we must remember that the universe rarely conforms to our models. Rather, our models must conform to the universe. Lucas, who had become something of a celebrity at the Institute, found himself in the unusual position of being cited in xenobiology textbooks. His hunting skills, passed down through generations of his family, were now recognized as valuable scientific knowledge rather than merely primitive traditions. A year after the infamous bloody carcass incident, as it had come to be known among students, Lucas was invited to give the keynote address at the Institute's annual symposium. Standing before an audience of the galaxy's foremost xenobiologists, he reflected on how far things had come since he'd accidentally disrupted Professor Thrix's lecture. "Evolution isn't just about physical adaptations," Lucas told the assembled scientists. "It's about finding unique solutions to survival challenges. Humans didn't develop claws or fangs or incredible speed. Instead, we developed endurance, tool making, and pattern recognition. We became hunters not because we were naturally equipped for it, but because we figured out how to overcome our limitations. From the front row, Professor Thrix nodded approvingly. The professor's latest research now incorporated insights from human hunting behaviors into a broader theory of intelligent species development, suggesting that problem-solving approaches were as important as physical adaptations in evolutionary success. After the symposium, a new exhibit was unveiled in the Institute's museum, Human Hunting Technologies Through History. Lucas had helped curate the collection, which displayed everything from early stone tools to modern compound bows, alongside interactive displays explaining human tracking techniques and hunting strategies. As Lucas guided a group of first-year students through the exhibit, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. His disruption of a lecture had led to a complete revision of how the galaxy's scientific community understood human evolution. And to think, Professor Thrix said as they concluded the tour, all of this began because you were late to class. Sometimes the best scientific discoveries happen by accident, Lucas replied. Like when a human walks into a lecture about how humans aren't hunters while carrying fresh meat. The professor's skin flushed a light purple, the Zentarian equivalent of laughter. Indeed. It reminds me of the old scientific adage, when theory contradicts reality, it's not reality that needs revision. In the years that followed, Lucas continued his dual role as colonist and academic consultant. The Jenkins method, as it came to be known, was adopted by xenobiology programs throughout the Galactic Union, bringing practitioners with real-world experience into academic settings to challenge and enhance theoretical understanding. What had begun as an embarrassing moment for both Lucas and Professor Thrix had transformed into a significant advancement in xenobiological science. Sometimes it seemed the most valuable scientific insights came not from careful laboratory work, but from someone walking through the wrong door at exactly the right time. And occasionally, those insights arrived with blood dripping on the floor. Back on New Montana, Lucas still hunted regularly, though now he often had alien observers documenting his techniques for academic papers. His traditional skills had gained new respect in an interstellar context, proving that ancient knowledge remained valuable even in an age of advanced technology. During one such expedition, accompanied by Zev, who had become a close friend, Lucas reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. If I hadn't been running late that day, he said as they tracked deer prints through fresh snow, none of this would have happened. Professor Thrix would still be teaching that humans were just advanced gatherers, and I'd just be another colonist. Zev's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Perhaps it was inevitable. False theories eventually encounter contradicting evidence, though usually not quite so dramatically. Lucas laughed. I still remember the look on his face when I walked in with that deer. All three of his eyes looked ready to pop out. He tells that story himself now, Zev replied. Says it was the moment he remembered what it truly means to be a scientist, to follow evidence even when it contradicts your life's work. As they continued tracking through the forest, Lucas thought about how a simple hunting trip had changed not just his life, but the galaxy's understanding of human evolution. Sometimes the most important scientific discoveries didn't happen in laboratories or research facilities, but in everyday moments when reality challenged theory. And sometimes those moments involved a human walking into a lecture with fresh meat, contradicting everything being taught with nothing more than his presence. Science, Lucas had learned, advanced not just through careful experimentation, but through unexpected confrontations with evidence that couldn't be ignored even when it arrived dripping blood on an academic floor.